See you again with MOVINEMA. This time we will give a simple spoiler about the action thriller film, The Equalizer 2. The film begins by showing a man in a suit wearing a white skullcap sitting reading a book on a train heading to Turkey. This man named Robert McCall. Then there shows a small child with a woman and also his father. Let's say his father's name is Adam. Then Adam went to another carriage and then Robert followed him. The two of them had a chance to talk and Adam asked Robert why he came to Turkey. Robert replied he was looking for a Turkish man who had married an American woman and had a daughter. Robert explained that the man was an abusive man who was punishing his wife by taking her child and bringing her to Turkey. Adam realized that the person Robert was looking for was him. Therefore, he ordered his friends to beat up Robert. And here we can see the ability possessed by Robert where he can predict everything that is around him before taking an action. Then Robert approached Adam and gave him a choice whether he wanted excruciating pain or long-lasting pain. Time has changed by showing Robert's appearance, which is different from before, where now he is beardless and his head is hairy and now he works as a taxi driver. And in another place, a man named Albert who seemed to have just come home from work suddenly saw his wife with an injured face as a result of the persecution. There was seen a man, then the man shot his wife right in front of his eyes. Then Albert was also killed by that evil man. It seems that they did this, they had received orders from someone to kill the husband and wife. On the other hand, Robert is returning to his job as a taxi driver. One time he gets a passenger order from a man. The man asks him to take a woman to his apartment. The woman looks in pain. It wasn't long before Robert returned to the man's apartment. Robert explained that he took the woman to the hospital because of her injuries. Robert returned to the man to teach lessons. Inside the apartment, Robert managed to knock out 4 men in just 29 seconds. After that, Robert then went home, and when he arrived at his house he was surprised because Susan was already in his house. Susan is a woman who can be considered as an agency to investigate a case, and currently she and other agents, one of whom is named Dave, will investigate the husband and wife murder case that occurred at the beginning of the film. Susan and Dave and other members came to the crime scene when the murder occurred and then they conducted an investigation. One day, when Susan was returning to her hotel, she was suddenly attacked by 2 strangers. He tried to fight, but the 2 men managed to make him helpless. Then, in another place, Robert is seen talking to a young man named Miles. While talking to Miles, Robert suddenly gets a phone call from someone. The person is Susan's husband named Brian. He tells him that Susan has been killed by an unknown person. Robert, who heard the news, immediately went to Washington to visit Brian and Susan's house. Then on the other hand, it shows 2 men who are suspected of being the perpetrators who abused Susan. While they were enjoying the orgy, suddenly a cell phone rang, and when the call was answered, the room they were in exploded. And outside that place, several people were seen who turned out to be the perpetrators of the husband and wife murder at the beginning of the film. Furthermore, Robert is seen conducting an investigation into the murder case of Susan by collecting some evidence, including the CCTV footage of the hotel where Susan was killed. After that, Robert went to visit Dave. He explained to Dave that after he saw the hotel CCTV footage, he found something wrong about Susan's murder, which turned out to be planned. Apart from that, Robert also continued his investigation of the case investigated by Susan regarding the murder of the husband and wife at the beginning of the film, looking at the photos of the victims and the crime scene. Then Robert imagined himself at the crime scene and his position as a victim, and he then identified and analyzed by demonstrating all the possibilities that the perpetrators had in the act of murder. Then he contacted Dave again and told him about the conclusion of the results of the analysis that had been carried out regarding the husband and wife murder case. Robert explained to Dave that Susan was conducting an investigation at the crime scene of the husband and wife's murder. It was possible that Susan knew the culprit because Susan became a threat to the perpetrator, In the end, he was also killed by the same perpetrator. When he was carrying out his job as a taxi driver, he got a passenger who looked suspicious, and sure enough, while on the way, the man suddenly attacked Robert. Furthermore, Robert took the man's cell phone to investigate. The next day, Robert came back to Dave to tell him what had happened. Robert told that there was a man who wanted to kill him, and it is suspected that this was done at the behest of the perpetrator, who actually Robert got the main perpetrator's number from the cell phone of the man who had previously wanted to kill him. Then Robert called the perpetrator's number, and unexpectedly Dave's cell phone rang, and it turned out that the perpetrator of the husband and wife murder at the beginning of the film was Dave himself. He also killed Susan because Susan could have known about his evil deeds. When taking the cell phone from the man who was trying to kill him, Robert actually already knew the culprit was Dave, but here you can see that apart from having reliable analytical and martial arts skills, Robert is also not one to rush into making a decision. He did not immediately beat up or engage in other acts of violence against Dave. Robert approached him calmly and asked for an explanation why Dave did this evil deed. After that, Dave also told that he did what he did not alone. He then invites Robert to meet with his accomplice, who turns out to be the ones who executed the husband and wife in the murder, as well as the two men who attacked Susan. There, Robert told them casually that he would kill them all for what they had done. The next day, Dave and his gang came to Susan's husband, Brian. They also intended to kill him, but Robert had predicted this, so Robert had picked up Brian and taken him to a safe place. Then in another place, at Robert's house, Miles is seen painting the walls of Robert's house. Not long after that, Dave and his gang appeared to find Robert. A panicked Miles then contacts Robert, who is on his way. At that time, it turned out that Robert had installed a surveillance camera so that Robert could monitor their arrival into the house, then told Miles to hide in a secret place behind the bookcase. After Miles enters, he sees Dave and his accomplice from inside the secret room through the two-way mirror. Then when Dave was about to shoot the mirror, suddenly Robert called him, and he said he was going to a place where Dave also knew that place, and they would do battle in that place. Then Dave and his gang left Robert's house. After he felt the situation was safe, Miles then came out of his secret hiding place to check on the situation. Time has moved when Robert headed to the town where he lived before, which is now being evacuated because of the big storm that happened. Not long after that, Dave and his gang also arrived at the venue. Dave and 3 other people prepared to face Robert with complete and sophisticated weaponry. They then split up and hear Dave to a high place to oversee the situation there, while the others scattered to search the places there and look for Robert's whereabouts. Robert is not a random person to deal with a situation like this. Robert had prepared a strategy with careful planning so that, one by one, Dave's gang died. Starting from a bearded man named Andre, he was shot dead using a weapon like an iron arrow that hit him right in the head. Then followed by Harry. He died because his focus was diverted by a row of photos of Susan stuck to a wall. When his focus was diverted, Robert immediately attacked him with several knife slashes. And the other one, named Restnik, he died because of the explosion. And now only Dave was left, but even so, Dave also turned out to be a pretty smart guy. Miles, who was previously caught at Robert's house, is allowed to live to be used as a hostage. When Dave aims his shot at the trunk of the car containing Miles, it turns out that Robert quickly shoots the car's tires so that Dave's shot misses and does not hit Miles. When Dave lost focus, it turned out that Robert was already in front of him, and then they fought, which Robert won in the end. Then when all was done, Robert took Miles out of the trunk and untied him. There Robert was seen enjoying the stormy atmosphere in his house before. Then a few days after that, Miles was seen wearing his uniform on the school bus and living a normal life to achieve his goal of becoming a talented artist, and then the movie ends.